heard a lot of boxing fighters and trainers tell you that the jab is the most important punch in the boxing arsenal, right? Or that they would prefer to have a good jab than a great hook, right? So, is this saying true for boxing? Yes, it is. Is this saying true for Muay Thai? Some people say yes, some people say no. So, I'm going to give you an overview of how to use the jab for boxing and how to use the jab for Muay Thai. I'm going to use the scenario where both opponents are righties. In the case you're fighting an opponent of the opposite stance as you, it's going to be the subject of another lesson. Are you ready? Let's go. First, you can start using the classic circle boxing, going to the left outside of your opponent's power strikes, right? Doing so, you're using the jab from the outside, and you can also use it as a counter to your opponent's own jab by moving your head inside or outside his jab. And then if it doesn't work, you get to change your approach. Double the jab, feint, or use to the body, all right? So you're gonna go down and push to his stomach, feint to the head, feint to the stomach. And you resume your circle boxing until you produce the effect that you need. About the jab to the body, there's two ways to throw it, all right? You throw it or to the sternum or to the stomach. And you have two approaches to do so. Or you throw the jab to destabilize your opponent and you keep going on the side. It's a jab that stays outside of the range. Or you use it as an offensive jab. You're gonna stay like this in front of your opponent, fake him to the head, and bang, and come back to position. That's a power jab to the stomach. Two ways to throwing the jab to the body. Just a quick note that in Muay Thai, the jab to the body, you cannot bend your upper body because you're vulnerable to kicks and knees. So you're gonna have to stay straight up. Your knees are going down, and bam! Circle boxing jab worked. You're going to follow up from outside the range to inside the range. You're going to use what is called a falling jab, aka a stepping jab, aka the Jack Dempsey jab, which is described in one of the greatest books ever written about boxing, Championship Fighting by Jack Dempsey, 1950. You push off the back foot and bang! Suddenly you're inside. From outside you end up inside. Note that you need to stay defensively responsible. So by doing this, you can come in by moving your head to avoid his own counter. Bang! And you can also move your head the other way. Bang! Note that my fist is not, I'm not screwing my fist on the power jab. I push off my back foot and my front foot is going to land like somebody's cutting the grass under my feet, and I'm going to land a little bit like a karate move. Bam! And then I'm going to bring back my back foot. Here you go, I'm inside, and that's the falling jab. Let's say your falling jab didn't work, your opponent escaped, gave you an angle. What you're gonna do? You're gonna try to set up a trap for him, going backward, half a step back, throwing a lazy jab to lure him. Then he steps in, you don't move, bam! You throw the right hand, you just set him up for a power strike. This is called back foot fighting. Let's say back foot fighting didn't work. Your opponent escaped, gave you an angle, and went to the ropes. So now he has the back to the ropes, or even better, in the corner. You're going to follow him in the corner, and that's where you throw keep me at bay jab, because you need time to think. You don't know what you're going to do yet. So you want him to stay there. Keep him at bay, bother him just enough so he cannot set up any offense. You're still ready to shoot with your boxing stance, back foot off the floor, so you can shoot, but there's no power. So you don't screw your fist, and you don't pivot your hip. It's just hop, 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 keep him at bay, and then bing! Now I know what I want to do. Bam, bam! All right, keep me at bay jab. From way outside, with his back foot completely off the canvas, like this. Bam, 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 bam. He was keeping his opponent at It's a little similar than the keep him at bay jab, except that he's running around the ring, but it still doesn't have no power at all. Muhammad Ali jab. Floyd Mayweather jab. All right. So it's a jab actually thrown from what is called the Philadelphia stance, from under, all right, at an upward angle. And your legs are much wider than in the normal stance, all right? So you're gonna mislead your opponent about what range you really are, you know, because you're moving your upper body. And pop, pop, pop. Mayweather is famous for using it, but many others used it to great extent. Bernard Hopkins, James Toney was great at it, and a guy like Sergio Martinez would go to even more extremes by just lowering his arm completely, and we'd be like this, pop, pop, pop. All this fighting in the pocket. Philadelphia stance. Emanuel Steward Jab, perfected by Klitschko under legendary trainer Emanuel Steward. It's a jab that you throw not to hurt your opponent, but you throw a little off target on the side of his head, and you allow your jab to slip on the side of his head and maneuver your opponents the way you want him. All right, pop, bam, and then you blast him from an angle. This jab allowed Klitschko to last as a champion for 10 years. It took almost 10 years for other trainers to pick up on the technique and find ways to nullify it. Emanuel Steward, one of the greatest trainers ever. That was an overview of the different jabs that you use in the sweet science. How do you use the jab in Muay Thai? That the jab is no good in Muay Thai, and they base their assumption on two things. First, the jab of Muay Thai is really the teep. That's what they say. The jab of Muay Thai is the teep, all right? Since the teep is the jab of the leg. And they say that the leg has much more reach than the arm and is much more powerful. So that's it for the jab. That's how they think. They dismiss the fact that the teep is much slower than the arm, and that the teep is thrown in a straightforward fashion and is not used at angles. So an excellent jab nullifies an excellent teep if you use the proper angle and the proper footwork. The second assumption is that the boxing stance makes you extremely vulnerable to the low kick in Muay Thai. I'll show you why. Of course, you're gonna come like this, and of course your opponent is gonna blast you. So you cannot get into a Muay Thai fight with a blatant boxing stance. You need to camouflage your footwork and camouflage the way you switch stances from boxing to Muay Thai stances. On those two assumptions, most Muay Thai fighters of the old school barely use the jab just as a feint or as part of a combination or as a throwing jab. You know, a classic example of throwing a jab is to throw a jab way outside the target on the side, so your opponent will instinctively move away, and while he moves away, you blast him with a low kick. And that was it. That was how they used to use the jab up until the 90s, when great legendary fighters came along on the scene and brought in the art of the jab from the sweet science. Those fighters are Ramon Decker, Samad Payakaroon, Kaosai Galaxy, and a few others, and they changed the game completely. We are far from the golden era now. So don't let any trainer tell you that we don't use the sweet science in Muay Thai. You need to learn how to incorporate boxing techniques, especially the jabs, in your Muay Thai combat. How can you do this? Come to my seminar. See you soon.